A recent Pew Research Center report describing widely held views that Black Americans believed in, quote, racial conspiracy theories is getting some pushback. Some say the wording is offensive and can be dangerous ammunition for right-wing media and politicians to dismiss situations dealing with systematic racism. The center attached this editor's note to the report, quote, "This report is under revision. We use the words racial conspiracy theories as a shorthand and acknowledge that was not the best choice." DeAnna Hoskins is president and CEO of the JustLeadershipUSA, and she joins me right now. So, DeAnna, just first of all, explain just your thoughts on this. Why you say this is bad language by them?
Thank you, Roland. Actually, when Pew released this report and they utilized the words conspiracy theory at a moment when we have the narrative around election fraud theory, conspiracy, QAnon, the wording of that says that Black people just have a suspicion, and it almost gaslights our reality, systemic racism. And they utilize this word all the way throughout. They acknowledge these are, in fact, issues that have happened in the Black community, but they titled each section of Black America's racial conspiracy theory around criminal justice, around politics, which is harmful at a moment right now.
So, and is your fear that as a result of this report, it will just cause folks who are already paranoid to go, oh, see, and start advancing, frankly, more conspiracy theories?
Exactly. And not only that when we start talking about mass incarceration, when we talk about over-incarceration, systemic racism, Pew is a trusted reporter and research institution. You're going to have individuals say, oh, that. Conspiracy theory. Pew already.
I'm sorry, DeAnna. Start that comment over again because your signal froze. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. But what it does, it sets up the potential of the public, because of Pew's reputation around research and surveying, to say when we start talking about mass incarceration, systemic racism, to have it really undermine and gaslight, to say, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Pew has already researched that. So even with the editor's notes that we're revisiting this, it's already out there in mainstream media, and we know people pick up the titles and highlights and keep running with it.
Questions from the panel. Rebecca, you first.
So my question is, who over at Pew decided that they wanted to spend time focusing on researching Black folks? Did they actually have Black folks involved or Black data scientists involved? Or was it just a group of white people saying, hey, this is interesting about Black folks, so let's, peek into the Black communities and figure out what was going on? Like, I need to know, like,
right. That was my first question
for this.
That was my first question, and I asked my team to look at who is the author of this report, and it is a Black woman. So I went to the theory, all skin folk and kinfolk, because you must not have experienced the history that we have experienced in the Black community. But there again, the quickness of their adding that note when we called them out made me feel as if you knew what you were doing, because you retracted it too soon.
Robert.
So on that same point, did they look at any other groups and call their valid concerns conspiracy theories? Did they look at Jewish Americans who are fighting against anti-Semitism and say that's a conspiracy theory? Did they go to Stop Asian Hate and call that a conspiracy theory? Or is this, as you said, an intentional effort to undermine the plight of African Americans in this country?
I am with you that it was an intentional undermining of the plight of African Americans and continue to allow the systemic oppression. There again, the way it was written, and even in a report, that interview, she said, well, the questions didn't come out that way, but your answers did. Why did you write it that way? Why did you use that language if we are saying the facts that African Americans are over-incarcerated, African Americans have been undermined through systemic racism, but you continue to ask the questions one way, but then you reported it with all of these topics. And each section in the report says Black America believes in the racial conspiracy theory around politics. Each title is deliberate in that utilization of those words.
Derek.
DeAnna, appreciate your work in this space. And as a legislator, I read the report as well. And my question is, especially when she stated, aside from the historical events, right, the context, and I was a little, I was stuck right there, because if she would have included how we got here around the 13th Amendment, for example, and how the 13th Amendment set up mass incarceration. So my question to you, what can we do as a legislator to combat these sort of articles that mysteriously are popping up, over a 2-week period? She only interviewed 4,700, of our cousins. What can we do to combat this? Because this gets into our media consumption, and it becomes a little bit more challenging because we are in a 24-hour, 7 days, 365 cycle.
Right. I really appreciate that question, because that was what I asked. How do we get this? This is already out. You're only saying it's going to be revised, but it's already in people's thoughts. So how do we actually look at controlling what the media writes, actually pushing back on that, creating our own narrative? I think I shared this earlier with someone. I think we're in a critical time that we as Black people have not created our own narrative, because what is happening is institutions like Pew are trying to deliver our message and our narrative and utilizing our cousins to write the reports around that narrative.
All right. Well, again, this is why it's also important for us to respond when things like this happen, so the record is corrected, so people just don't take this and begin to run with it. So great job there. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right. Thank you very much.
Somebody's killing poor people, and it's going on.
When COVID happened, poor people were dying at a rate already of 800 people a day. Before COVID, if you went to a funeral every single day, it would take you 600 years to attend all the funerals of the people who will die from the ravages of policy violence, poverty, and low wages in America in just 1 year. It would take you 2 years and 19 days to go to all of the funerals of the people that will die today, and oftentimes silence. Nobody talks about this political genocide, but we are determined today to remember their death and be a resurrection of voting power and voice power like never before.
Economic justice and saving this democracy are deeply connected. We, as a nation, must listen to the demands of the poor, who are pushing and will continue to push political candidates and elected leaders to lift from the bottom so that everybody can rise.
We are the poor, the marginalized, and the underpaid. And we are taking one step forward to say that everybody has a right to live.
Poverty is not the fault of those who are impoverished. It is caused by those who make the policy.
There are over 135 million poor and low-wage, low-income people in this nation.
The biggest block of potential voters by far is low-income, low-wage voters.
I can't afford medicine. Sometimes I have to skip because of the cost.
The farm worker community is tired of the violence imposed upon us by greed, exclusion, and denial of basic human rights.
Those folk that represented by that casket, poor and low-wage workers who are the most moral people in this country because they go to work every day believing, even though going to work is hazardous to their health.
I'm tired of working 70 to 80 hours a week and still not have money for the necessity of bills. I'm tired of getting sick and not being able to go see the doctor, having to make a choice to pay between rent or the light bill or food or clothes.
You cannot claim to care about families and a culture of life and then do everything in your power to rob people of equal access to resources and to force them to live in poverty.
Leadership of both parties had waged war on poor people and low-wage workers.
And this government has treated people experiencing poverty, including their military families, with disdainful, deliberate, malicious neglect.
So the truth is that my son died from poverty, We refuse to accept poverty as the fourth leading cause of death.
The fourth leading cause of death in this, the richest country in the world.
We march today for our children and the generations to come.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
We will voice our demands and register our vote.
When we stand up and when we stand together, things change.
There is the electorate that is, and then there is the electorate that should be.
34 million eligible poor and low-income voters did not vote in 2016. If just 20% of those voters in swing states were mobilized around an agenda, they could change the political outcome of every election. So we're launching the most massive voter mobilization and turnout campaign in history of poor and low-wage voters, allies, and religious leaders.
People are dying, but we know it doesn't have to be this way. And so we are calling on everyone to join us in this Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival.
We are here, we will be seen, we will be heard, and our power will be felt. We don't need to be an insurrection. We are a resurrection that will be felt across this country. Are you ready? 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 We are a resurrection, and we are ready.